Hello, hey, welcome to another edition of Getting to the Other Side and helping couples to navigate the road to recovery. And I'm Eddie Capparucci, and I'm just so glad that you guys are here. I hope that you're going to get a lot out of what we're going to be talking today about. And our topic is her trauma and his response. And I have to tell you the truth. I mean, I believe that this is one of the most difficult issues that we face in the whole dynamics of trying to get couples to healing. I spend more time with men up front when they come into the office, just helping them learn to navigate and to properly approach their wives when they are going through their grieving. And it is a very, very difficult situation. And I'm going to walk through that today. I'm going to tell you what that's about, why it's so difficult for men and for you guys. I hope you're going to be out there listening because it's going to give you a lot of insight on what you can be doing to help her heal. If you remember in previous shows, I've told you that you really have two jobs. It's not just your recovery that you have to be focused on, but you also have to be focused on helping her to heal as things go on. So let's just kind of dive in and let's talk first and foremost about her trauma. The bottom line is guys just don't get it. We just do not understand the depth of the pain that they are going through. All men see is, oh, angry. She's angry. She's sad. But it's so much more than that. They don't recognize and don't understand that what it really is trauma. It was about 10 years ago, Barbara Steffen and Marcia Means came up with a book, and it was called Your Sexually Addicted Spouse. And I'm sure probably some of you have read it. If you haven't, you should. And what they did for the first time was they started to talk about the idea of, what are women really going through? Because prior to that, in many cases, it was looked upon that women were co-addicts. They were just as responsible for what the men's actions were as the men were, which totally is not true. Then what we saw was, and what Barbara, looking at the different symptoms that women were exhibiting, and saw that they matched up so closely with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And they mirror that. And I'll give you an example. A couple that I was dealing with, and I was doing some individual sessions, and I went out into the waiting room to greet the wife, and she's curled up in a fetal position on the couch, and tears running down her face, just shaking and rocking back and forth. And, I just sat down on a chair across from her. I pulled the chair up. I didn't want to sit next to her. Sat across from her, closed, and just started to very softly be talking to her and telling her, look, I know you don't want to be here. I know that you want all of this to go away. I understand, what you're going through. But what you're doing is you're being very brave. You're being very brave and sitting here and doing this work. Because, it's really interesting. A lot of women who come in, they sit on the couch and they'll say, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I shouldn't be here. Why am I here? Because their lives have been turned upside down. So again, Barbara and Marcia, they looked at this and they realized, oh, we are dealing with trauma. And that's exactly what's going on. So for husbands, for men, it comes to a point where it's like we don't understand the depth of what that pain is, the gut-wrenching feelings that are involved with it. And frankly, I will tell you, even I, as a counselor, I don't know the depth of what they're experiencing either because I've never experienced it. I do know, based on my education and my reading and what I see from these women, because I've dealt with so many of them, I can see the pain, but I've never felt that pain. That's why I'll never sit there and say to someone, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. Because I don't. I can't. But, and for husbands, you can't either. But you can get a really good understanding of what it's about. And this is the first place where men fall down, if they don't do their homework to understand what exactly is this pain that their wives are going through. I mean, for example, some of the symptoms that we're talking about is a sense of helplessness. Women just feel completely helpless. They don't know what to do. I can't fix him. I don't know how to fix myself. How do we ever go back to where we were? How does it all go away? It's like, what's up, what's down? That's what it looks like. Hyper vigilant, always looking, checking things out, finding out, is there something else that's going on? There's something else I don't know. They become detectives and they hate being detectives. They don't want to do that. And we understand that. They have nightmares. They get panic attacks. Women who've never had panic attacks before. And now all of a sudden they're experiencing panic attack, fatigue, flashback, and then even dissociation. They can get lost for hours, whether it's just sitting in a chair. And then next time they look up at the clock and it's like, oh my gosh, where did that hour and a half go? Because they've been so deep in their thoughts of what's going on. Avoidance. They want to stay away from people. And this sometimes can even be their kid, their own kid, whether they're younger or even adult children. They just don't want to interact with people because a lot of times they're not telling folks what's going on. So now I got to go out there and I got to put on this facade of, look at me. Oh, yes, everything's wonderful. We're all great. What a beautiful relationship we have. And that kills them, looking at doing things like that. They wind up getting sick. They have health issues because of it. Their blood pressure is rising. Different other things that are happening. And then, of course, it's the one sign that all the men see: rage. That they see. They see that very, very clearly. But there's so much more that's going on. And that's why, as men who created this mess in the first place, because that's what we have done, we've created this, we need to be able to understand what they're going through, and then how can we be there to engage them. First thing you need to understand is that triggers are everywhere. They're everywhere. And they can happen at any time. Again, hear it constantly. Guys sitting there saying, we're having a wonderful day. It was beautiful. We're sitting there. We're having lunch out of the restaurant and everything's perfect. And she's smiling and she's happy. And then all of a sudden, she just changes. And it's probably because maybe a woman walked by who reminds her of maybe an affair partner that you knew, or she saw you glancing over somewhere and all of a sudden it came in her head that, oh my gosh, is he looking at someone else? And we need to be very sensitive and understanding to the fact of triggers and how the power that they have, because they do have great power. And we need to be able to realize, look, you know what? Yes, things can change on a dime, but we have to be aware of it and we have to be ready for that to happen. So guys, what are you doing wrong? Well, one thing you're doing wrong is you're minimizing things. You're taking the situation, but it was only pornography. Or, it was an emotional affair. We didn't have sex together. Or, well, when I did touch her, the only thing happened was my thumb brushed up against her nipple. You're trying to make it less than what it is. And that's not going to work. You need to own what you've done, because that's the first thing when it comes to recovery. You cannot recover if you do not own your mistakes. So that's part of what's going on. Other thing is blaming her. Again, we see a lot of that going on, that, well, you know what, if she just gave me sex more often, or if she just, would dress a certain way, or if she didn't yell at me so much, it's meet her. And again, when do you become responsible for your actions and for what you've done? Because let's face it, really, no matter what she did or did not do, you still had options. There are many options, including talking about the fact that you're not happy with things. Okay, maybe going to a counselor about the fact that you're not happy with things. There are many, well, even if it means, oh, I have to divorce you, there's many different options you could take beyond just, oh, I think I'll go and maybe have an affair or find a prostitute or hit a massage parlor or whatever it may be. We can't be blaming that on her. It is not her fault. I tell women all the time, you know, when they're sitting here saying, I don't understand, you know, what could I have done different? And I tell them, I go, you know what? I could replace you on that couch right now with any other woman in the world, and he'd still have done what he'd done. Because it's not about her, it's about us. And it's about the emotional pain that we feel, that we have buried in us, that we know we don't want to touch. We don't want to deal with it. So therefore, we continue running away. We continue looking for escape. We continue looking for outlets. So we need to own it. The other mistake that men really make a lot is they're trying to push her to move on. When is this going to be done? When are we going to get this finished? And you know, one of the first things we talk about during the initial session is healing time. And healing time, again, as I mentioned in a previous episode, is anywhere from 12 to 24 months. It can go 3 to 5 years, depending. And even through the rest of the lifetime, there will be triggers. So if you remember, I told you about the barrel of rocks. You have the barrel of rocks, okay? So maybe, you know, 8 years from now, there's a trigger and you just get a pebble at the side of your head. It's not a rock. It's just a little pebble, just to remind you, oh, yes, I still hurt occasionally. And we can't be pushing her to move on. We need to allow her to heal at her own pace. And all women heal differently from this. Men, what you need more than anything else is patience. You need to be very patient with her. And again, we created these messes, and we need to be able to sit beside her as the situation clears up. I know, not easy, especially because men will start to heal faster. They'll start to, as they really get into their program, if they're doing their work within 5 or 6 months, they're like, ooh, look at me. I feel better. I'm getting this. I'm starting to understand. I think it takes about good 2 years for men to really grasp everything in recovery. But the first 6 months, they're feeling really, hey, this is good. I feel good about myself. And he wants praise. He wants recognition. You want that from her. She's not ready to give it to you. So now you may get some. You may get a little bit, and that would be nice. But you're not going to get a lot of it. And you have to be understanding of that because she's just not ready. She's still bleeding inside. Another thing that men fall into the habit, the pit of, is trying to shut her down. You know, we've been through this already. I've answered all these questions. I don't know what else you want from me. You know, there's nothing else to be said. Can we just, you know, end it? Stop. Leave me alone. And then they go running off. And what you've done in those circumstances is you've just created more abandonment. See, you abandoned when you went and spent hours looking at pornography. You abandoned when you went and walked outside of your marriage for a relationship. And that is part of what she's trying to overcome. That and the deception, the lies, which I think probably more difficult than anything else to heal from. But you have to understand that if you're shutting her down, you are just re-engaging in the same sort of behavior. And it's not helpful for her as we go through that. So we need to be able to, again, sit there and listen to her pain, because that's the other issue that men don't see. They don't do. They don't see the pain. What they see is the hostility. They see the sadness. They see the frustration. They don't see what she's really going through. And therefore, if we start to slow things down as men, when we get the hurricane to start to come at us and say, okay, what's going on? Then we'll be in better place to be able to manage and hear that. This is a big one. It's a really, really big one. We don't share what's in our head. We don't talk about things. But why? Because we're so full of shame. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to share what we're really learning. We don't want to be able to let her know that, maybe I'm struggling. Maybe I'm struggling. Could you imagine it? Could you imagine going to her and saying, hey, guess what? I'm struggling today. And I know you guys are probably saying, you're out of your mind. Why in the world would I do that? That's insane. Actually, what that would be is, even though you may get a bad reaction at the moment, what you're doing is you're reinforcing the idea that, oh, I can be vulnerable and I can be truthful to you. And that is extremely important, because that's what you're ultimately trying to accomplish. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, I will be vulnerable. I will be honest. I will no longer be a threat to your safety. And that's how we become safe. That's how we make them feel safe, by being able to share what's in our head. Because again, if you don't, they're wondering, is he still struggling? Are things any better? Have you learned anything? Again, my wife hears that all the time, and with a lot of the women that she works with, is that I don't know where he is. And so therefore, what are you doing? You're keeping her in a heightened state of anxiety, because she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And therefore, you need to be able to go there and talk about that. And finally, what the other thing you're not doing is you don't validate emotions. That part of that low emotional IQ, and that's going to be one of the segments we're going to be doing in the near future. Majority of the men who come in to do this kind of work, I have found that they have low emotional IQs. I think I talked about this before, the fact that they really don't know what they feel beyond the core emotions of anger, sadness, happiness, fear. And if they do, they don't know how to express those, and they don't know how to take on other people's emotions. So with that, you don't know how to validate. So for example, she dives in and says, you know what? You were 20 minutes late tonight and you didn't call me, and there we go. The storm is off. And how do most men react? I got caught in traffic. It was really bad out there. You don't realize, when are you going to cut me a break? I would have been home on time if I could have been. You're not doing anything to help the situation. Versus validate, you know what? I can understand why you're upset. Yeah, you were expecting me at a certain time and I wasn't here. And I should have called. I should have just hit that button on my phone and let you know I was running behind. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. And leave it. You don't need to complain about the traffic. Now, she may say, so why were you late? I was late because it was really bad out there with the traffic. But that's not the excuse. The excuse is there is no excuse. I just should have called. It's always thinking outside of your own head. We need to move away from the inward thinking that we have as addicts. And we need to be looking outward. That's one of those examples of looking outward. Okay, whoa, traffic. Oh, I hate being in the traffic. This is such a mess. See, I'm thinking inward. Versus, ooh, traffic. Wow, my wife, that means I'm going to be about 20 minutes late. You know what? She's probably going to wonder where I am. Let me call. If that is reframing your thinking. That is a different approach that most men who suffer from an addiction, we weren't raised that way. Weren't raised to think like that. But that's not an excuse. We need to learn to think that way. That is part of the new guy that we're creating, because that's what she wants. She wants the new guy. She doesn't want to go back to the old guy. So you need to validate those emotions. The other aspect here, and the last one I'm going to get into, is this idea that I see it quite often where the man's pain winds up trumping his wife's pain. So therefore, she starts talking about, I can't believe that you've done this, and that, what would have led you to it? And he starts feeling guilty, and he starts feeling overwhelmed. And he's like, oh, I know, I feel horrible, and I feel terrible about it, and it's just destroying me, and I just feel like I want to die. And whoa, what about her? She's the one who's sitting here venting her pain, and now it's become about your pain. It becomes about you, where you become defensive. It's like, we've been through all this before, and I don't know what else to tell you. And it's really, I'm getting so tired, and I'm getting frustrated, and and it's me, 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 me. Once again, we go back to the idea we are very inwardly focused versus seeing the pain. That's the key. See the pain. Remember those 3 words. Through the next 18 to 24 months, 36 months, see the pain. Because if you do that, most likely you will make the right decision that will help her. Now, there could be times you see the pain, you do everything right, you're dead on, you are spot on, and it still doesn't stop. Okay, that's going to happen. But again, we're dealing with trauma. And therefore, then we give grace, just like hopefully she's giving grace in the fact that I'm giving you an opportunity to work this out with me. And again, as I said, I know none of this is easy. It's very, very difficult. And men start to get tired. I mean, if I had $1 for every man who came in and sat on my couch and said, I don't know how much more I can take. I think I'm done. And they just need to be able to say, okay, how do we expand that bandwidth? How do we give ourselves a little bit more that we can go back out there and do it again? And sometimes it has to be, okay, what are those healthy lifelines you're bringing in to replenish you so that you can go back and help her? You have to help yourself along the way too, so that you can help her. It's really kind of funny, but we'll go back to the idea of what I mentioned before, the idea that, when you shut her down, what you're doing is you're preventing her from grieving. And then what you're really doing is you're preventing her from healing. See those storms? That's healing. I know it sounds crazy, but it is. She's healing because she's able to vent. She's able to talk about it. How do we treat post-traumatic stress syndrome? You talk about it, and 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 you talk about it until it desensitizes. And it's the same thing here. That is part of their recovery. Not all of it. They need to be in their group and doing the other things there, but that is part of it. So you start to shut it down. You don't validate. All you're doing, you're just kicking the can down the road. And she's not healing the way she wants to be. The last point I want to bring up, which is, a really interesting one that happens quite often, is men will come in and, say, I say, so how are things at home? She's turned around. It is really amazing. I get these last 48 hours. They've been amazing. I've been great. She's hugged me. She's kissed me. I mean, I think she's over all of this. We're ready. I'm like, well, I hate to bust your bubble, but there's another storm coming. and you just see them get deflated. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry to tell you that, but there's another storm coming. Because see, they start to see that stability, all right, and they confuse it, thinking, oh, okay, everything well, but no, see, that's not it. That's part of the grieving process. With grieving, we have periods of grieving, and then we have functioning. And then we grieve again, and then we function. And hopefully over time, if you've done it right, your grieving period gets shorter and your functioning period get longer. So you have a functioning period going on, but while that period is going on, underneath the surface, it's like this. There's a lot of anxiety and stuff that's still going on with her. And that's why it can turn like that. Whatever triggers her. And all of a sudden it's like, we're in crisis? A guy come in last week. It was really interesting. And what he, I said to him, I go, so how's the relationship? I always like to check in on the relationship. How's the relationship? He goes, we've had a great week. I go, really? You go, why? He goes, we were only going to get divorced once. I go, okay. Because usually she's throwing it out there almost every day. And last week she said, just once she was going to divorce him. He goes, we're making improvement. I go, oh, that sounds like it is being improvement. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. But we need to understand when you see that calm, that there may be something, that there's something else that's still there. And that's why I tell guys, I call it walk into the fire. If you're seeing calm for long enough, go to her and say, hey, look, I know it seems like you seem like you're doing better, you're doing well, but what's really going on? And the reason I call it walk into the fire is because by bringing that up, you may get burnt. But again, the message that you deliver with that is, I'm willing to sit here with you in your pain. And that's really, really what's important. You have to be able to sit with her while she's hurting. You need to go do research to understand what the depth of that pain looks like. You need to start to put in the habit and the skills, develop the skills to validate and to be able to deal with her pain in a very healthy way so that you are demonstrating to her, I am here, I'm committed, I will never abandon you again. And Tammy, that's what I got for you this week.
Well, thank you so much. There's a lot there. You shared some information, and Barbara Steffens and Marcia Means did write an excellent book, and it really was one of the first books that looks at things as trauma. And of course, I have to show you Rob's book, Prodependence: Moving Beyond Codependency, because that's really supporting the partners. Going, hey, the house is on fire. You're trying to put it out, and like you said, nothing that the partner does or doesn't do is going to change. So when you said, I could substitute a completely different person and he's still going to do that, that's really true. So I think it's tragic when people get blamed for what their addict did, or didn't do. I think, the post-traumatic stress, there's chronic, I get emails all the time. People identify that they have, PTSD, the chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's the perpetual. You talked about the partners and the health, the ramifications. I hear from partners so often who have some chronic medical conditions. Some of them are autoimmune, some whatever, and our bodies are just not supposed to be under stress like that all the time. I was thinking too about like all the things you're saying are exactly what an addict can and should be doing, but I was also going, and it's the thing they don't want to do the most. It's like, if I don't want to deal with if I'm acting out because I don't even want to deal with my emotions, I sure don't want to deal with an angry partner. So it's really tough to be willing to hear. And I've heard too often, like you said, where it's like, why can't you get over it? Like all of this. And like, I've told you everything, I shouldn't have to discuss this again, like, the one and done. It's just, it's like poof, and
it's a catch-22 for these men. Because again, to your point, They do everything and anything to move away from distressful emotions. And what are they dealing with now? Very high, intense, distressful emotion. But guess what this also is? This is a learning opportunity for them. And that's the way I position it. I go, guess what? You're going to learn how to deal with emotions, and you're going to learn in the deep end of the pool, because that's where you are.
Yeah, because they're not only dealing with a partner who's got negative emotions, understandably, but they also have to deal with all their emotions. And often, for these guys, it's it's the shame and guilt, because look what I've done, and I don't want to take responsibility for it. So so it's way easier for me to focus over there. So I want to show you too the Sex Addiction 101, and there's an accompanying workbook, and those are really useful. That's a really useful book on looking at what sex addiction is, and that's sex, porn addiction, love addiction, all of that. It's about intimacy disorders. I struggle to be intimate, therefore I'm going to go, use porn, and hook up, I'm going to do whatever. And when you talked about, coming home and being home on time, or, like whatever I say. So I look like the book woman today, but so Dr. Rob wrote Out of the
Good
Doghouse.
books. They're great books.
Yes, they are. They're so useful. And this, like he says, I make 12 cents on them. So it's not like he's going to get rich off of these, but they're so useful. So there's the Out of the Doghouse, a step-by-step relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. And it talks about, if you say you're going to take out the trash, take out the trash. If you say you're going to be home at 5:30 and you're going to now be home at 5:20 or 38:03 because the traffic is bad, you're calling or texting and saying, I'm going to be 3 minutes late. And then with Marnie Faree, who's really well known in the Christian therapy world, but she does really good work anyway. Beyond, it doesn't matter is what I'm saying, but Out of the Doghouse for Christian Men, a redemptive guide for men caught cheating. So she's got biblical context that she added to Rob's original book. But, it really is about regaining trust. You talked about the lag time for a partner, and like I want to give some hope. It's like, can all of this be healed? Yes. And one of the reasons why the lag time for the partners is because the addict gets a program of recovery. If they do what they're supposed to do, what is suggested, they're going to start making progress. But the partner's still going like, how am I going to know that that's real?
Yes.
So there has to be a lag time where the addict is showing that they're trustworthy, that and then the partner can start seeing, hopefully, like you said, there's bigger spaces where there's, some calm for each of them. But, and yes, is stuff going to continue to happen? Probably. Addiction is a chronic, mental health issue. And but I don't want it to be all doom and gloom either. Honestly, the people that I see that get into recovery, and both of them are on this journey, and there can be healing and there is support, and amazing things happen. And I see people that are more connected in a deeper and honest way than when they said I do, 20 years ago. It just so changes things.
We'll be talking more about that if we do other shows, because you are absolutely right. It is those individuals who do their work. And that's why in some cases you will get those people who've been betrayed who are like, no, I'm not doing work. I'm not doing this. I shouldn't have to do it. This is his fault or her fault, whatever. I am not. And what happens is they wind up struggling longer because they don't have the support network around them. When both of those folks are in a full recovery program, okay, not just their counseling, but everything else that's needed, we do see amazing things that happen, because we're not going back to where we were. We're going someplace new. We're going to go to a different type of relationship. And that's where it has to go. Because again, you go back to your point before about, guys, that they would just do what they said they're going to do. Again, that goes back to the point that, that's not part of their DNA. And so now what they're doing, they're really relearning, not just, how do I get rid of this destructive behavior, But what did it mean to be in a very healthy relationship? What did it mean to put others before myself? And so therefore, that's why we're looking at the complete transformation of a person versus just, okay, we got rid of the behavior, but yet you're still not doing the rest of the things that need to be done to strengthen the bond in the relationship.
Well, and the behavior is just a symptom. I hold to that. The behavior is just a symptom. And I want to clarify. So like when the couple's in recovery, in my opinion, the addict is in recovery for a program, and the partner's and I guess if you're going to say recovery, they're going to be in a supportive environment for
betrayal,
betrayal.
right.
Yeah.
Betrayal,
Yeah.
recovery, supportive.
Yeah. Because we don't hold that, the whole codependent that you're addicted to the addict, So it really is, and I hear what you're saying with the people that go, if you just fix him, we're going to be fine. Even if they divorce, often, they're hauling this bag of trash around with them because they haven't healed through,
Right.
through that process. So I always encourage, even if they absolutely are going to leave the relationship, do get the support to help heal, so that when you are on the next journey or the next chapter of your path, you aren't carrying around the stench of the last relationship.
Because what happens is the new person who comes into that relationship with that person now winds up paying for the sins of the other people. Because again, to your point, they haven't processed their own pain. Therefore, there's all this mistrust. Right. And they're just not, they're going to struggle.
The new person won't get the benefit of automatically being trusted until they are. It'll be, I don't trust you. Nobody can be trusted.
But I also understand where the folks who've been betrayed, understand where they're coming from too. It's the fact that, here it is, my life's kind of humming along, and now it's been turned upside down, and I now need to go to a support group, or I need to be in some counseling to deal with my betrayal. You know what? I really don't want to put myself through this. I want to try to just move on, because they're the ones who are trying to move on, but yet they're constantly like saying, but make sure he gets fixed, which is true. We need to, well, not fix him, but we need to transform the heart with him. But at the same time, they don't understand that they need to do things for their own benefit to help them to heal too.
I thought it was important what you talked about, because Dr. Rob has talked often that, these two people, particularly in the early phases, really aren't going to be able to support each other so much because there's so much rage from the partner, but there's also I can't tolerate any of this, and I'm going to say the wrong things because I don't have the tools. So making sure that they're getting support from outside so that they can at least be hopefully not continuing to do more damage, along the way, makes sense. So when you talked about making sure you're getting your tank full from other sources, recovery groups and support, sponsors and, all, therapists and everything else. And for partners, I mean, it's why this whole platform was created, so that there's supplemental support in a safe environment, for people that, that are looking for that. So, and you talked about grieving, and yeah, grief is a process. And, I think that the people that try to circumvent that, make it shorter, it ends up coming up to bite you. I think it's just one of those, it sucks, but you got to go through it. You can't stick it on a shelf and, not look at it again. It really, but I think, my perspective is, I'm willing to, like you talked about, go in the fire. I'm willing to do the hard work because the benefits of doing it, the relationships I have are truer, the integrity I have, within myself, I value that. I don't walk around in shame and guilt all the time. I used to, and I don't have to do that anymore because I'm showing up, as as honest as I possibly can be, on any given day. I'm still human, but right. But that's the benefits, and that goes to all of my relationships. So,
but there's also, the need for someone to be outlining to the people who come in to that, look, this is where you can go, like what you're talking about, what you can ultimately feel, because they have no clue. It's like, we don't know where to go from here. We don't know what to do. I don't see any vision where this can get better. And especially, from a person who's been betrayed, how do you forgive this? Especially the lying and the deceitfulness. How do you ultimately forgive? How do you ultimately trust again? And therefore, they need to be able to hear, especially that's why the support group is good, because it's like, oh, I'm listening to, Tommy over there or Beverly over here, and they're saying, yeah, I was in your shoes, but now we're moving forward. I'm in a better place than I was before. Healing is possible. Healing possible. I think that's what you're really saying, Tammy.
Yeah, yeah, and it has to be healing from within, and forgiveness, and we should talk about that in a whole other thing too. But forgiveness is something that I do for myself. It's not, it's not letting that other person off the hook. It's recognizing that I just don't need to carry this burden around with me, and so I'm going to forgive that person, even though I still understand that they were wrong, but I'm going to forgive them so that we can find a pathway, and I'm not just holding it over their head, going, I'm going to remember this forever, and I'm going to throw it up every single time. So, but there's a couple of questions in here too. And I think the first question goes right to what we're talking about. So my husband had a lifelong sex addiction, which involved numerous cheating for his entire for the entire relationship. He seems to be doing the work after several additional years of lying and pretending after being caught. I don't know how to ever trust again, even though he's a more compassionate person. What do we do?
Well, I think here, again, and can fully understand the fact that, you've gone through this for a long period of time. It's been multiple things that have happened. But what you're also doing is you're looking and you're saying, oh, I am seeing change. And I think that's what you need to really rely upon. It goes back to what Tammy was talking about before. The idea of forgiveness is for yourself. And the fact that, I'm going to continue to be, hopeful that the change that I'm seeing is real. And versus just always waiting for the floor to drop out from underneath you. Yes, are you taking a leap of faith with this? Absolutely. But at some point, you made that decision to do so by staying in the relationship. Now that you're there, you have to be able at some point to say, you know what? Let me, and again, we don't have to you never give your whole heart back from a trust standpoint. Again, I don't know if Tammy may feel a little bit different than me with this, but I don't think there's always going to be that little piece that's going to be like, ooh, I'm a little worried, I'm a little skeptical. But just see the behaviors that he's doing, try to reinforce those behaviors by demonstrating that you see them and complimenting him about that. But also I'd be challenging him to say, you know what? Tell me more insight to what you keep learning about yourself that could, reassure that you may never do what you've done before. Okay? Because obviously there's doubts in your mind, there's questions you have. It's okay to be bringing those up and to have those. And besides, depending on how he deals with that with you, that's going to say a lot about how much his growth has been. Because if he can just sit there and just say, yeah, let's talk about this. I understand that you're still hurting and that you're still upset. I do want to be able to help you. If he's able to do that for you, then that means that shows another growth thing for him.
Yeah, I was thinking what you're talking about with not sharing what's in your head. Because I hear the uncertainty, he seems to be doing the work. And I hear this all the time from partners of, he says he's doing this, or I think he's in recovery. And, you mentioned your wife, gets that kind of messaging as well. So that means the addict is not clearly telling their partner, here's where I'm at, here's my transparency, here's my, 3-circle plan, here's my sponsor, here's what I do, on any given day for for my recovery, so that they, so that you have that. And it isn't about you policing it. It's about, I just want to share with you so that you have, so I can help you understand, so that, I can help rebuild that trust. So, and I actually 100% agree. Once the betrayal has happened, like that person is never going to have 100% trust again, and part of the grieving process is grieving the loss of that innocence of, that, we're in this together, you've got my back, I've got your back, you would never do something intentionally to hurt me. And you did. And so now you've done it before, you could do it again. And so there's always that little piece. However, there's, I think with time and with the honesty that comes with this, it's like, I think that there gets to be a different level, so it isn't the naive, trust maybe, but there's this trust that, this person is really working on themselves and they really want to be in this relationship. And I know that they're, this is where we're headed. And so I think it's a different kind of trust, that can be rebuilt. But, I did take encouragement. He's a more compassionate person. That doesn't come like, the addicts can't really fake that. They can manipulate really well, but faking compassion, like you would know. So I honestly think there's lots of reason to be heartened by what you're seeing. But, like Eddie said, I'd say, where are you at with stuff? Let's discuss this, so that, I think even saying, I really want, I want to build this. I want to trust, obviously I've got reasons why, I can't just automatically, but, if we can talk about this, I want to get there. So,
we find a lot of times what you'll find is that women, as the process continues to unfold, is they are reluctant to go, or even, I'm sorry, not just women, but men also. The betrayed is reluctant to go to the betrayer to say, hey, you know what? I'm still feeling insecure. I'm still feeling hurt. And the reason being is, I don't want to upset him. I don't want him to think that I don't think he's doing good work or she's doing good work. And, that is the wrong approach. Because again, remember what we're trying to do. We're building true intimacy, which is about being honest. So therefore, if you're hurting on a particular day, you have particular doubt, to be able to go in a way that's not making accusations, that is not, shaming, but to say, this is how I feel. I'm feeling this today. Today's a bad day for me. And give him an opportunity to show more of that compassion that you've been seeing. Because Tammy's absolutely right. If you're getting compassion, that is something that, addicts don't provide. So therefore, there's some sort of transformation, but I can also understand that there's the reluctancy, to believe if what am I seeing, what I'm seeing, should I really believe it? So.
And I'm going to give you a couple. I think all of that's great. I think even acknowledging, saying, I appreciate, I see that you've been more compassionate. It's kind of like, praise good behavior, so I think that, and even if you have the conversation when you're not having a bad day, and just say, I see that you're more compassionate. I see that you're doing some things. I'd like to learn more, and then that also probably gives you more space when you're not having a good day to be able to go, today's not a good day for me. John Taylor does the webinars on Mondays, and he's got a lot of I like his series. He does a lot of practical tools, and so I think you'll find some things that are beneficial. And his are about relationships, not just with your significant other, but across the board. But it's really helpful tools on on having difficult conversations, having negotiating things. I mean, whatever it is, he's got some practical tools. You may want to refer to the previously recorded and join again next Monday too. So then there's another one that says, it seems to me the betrayed spouses who don't want to do the work is that they are rightly angry and haven't grieved. Once the possibility of grieving is accepted, they can start on their own road to healing. Forgiveness, the forgiveness is within, forgiving myself. That's beautifully put.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I think, but see, part of the healing is the idea of grieving. And I don't know if there's one before the other. I mean, and I think the grieving process needs to be had. You have to remember there are some people who've been betrayed who also don't like dealing with negative emotions. Okay, this is not their comfort zone. They don't sit well with emotional pain. So now they're being sort of forced into this, and therefore what the natural reaction is going to be, no, I don't want to. I'm rebelling from this. But what we always seem to notice is over time, they come to realize, you know what, I can't cut corners here and I need to do the work. And sometimes it's just that, it's giving them the time and the opportunity to be able to come to grips with the fact that, you know what, yes, I also need to heal. And in order to heal, I'm going to need these things in my life to do so.
But I think what you're talking about is really important, and I think anybody that's here, is looking for healing. They're looking to do something that changes things. There are, like you said, there are partners that also don't want to go to who wants to go to the negative emotion? I'm sorry, like, that's not, I mean, I'd rather be happy, and joyous and all of that type of thing. But, I get that I'm not going to be able to experience true joy if I also if I'm not willing to experience, the negative emotions as well. Because the numbing out, I mean, that's what addiction is. I'm numbing out. I'm not in touch with any of those things. I miss out on all the good stuff in avoiding, the bad stuff. But I do know, I mean, I've been around long enough. I know plenty of stories of people who just went, not doing that. Or there was this one woman, and I felt so bad for her because she was like, she didn't really believe in divorce, had been divorced, and now was in the situation. And she was like, basically, she was going to make his life a living hell the rest of his life. And she didn't want to do anything to help her heal. But, like, I'm not divorcing him, but, I'm not letting him off the hook ever. And I just thought, wow, I mean, that felt toxic to me, for her to have to carry, that much negativity forever. So.
Right. But there are certain people who've been betrayed, and you'll see this a lot on the male side of men who've been betrayed, who just refuse to let go of that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, what they're going to do is they're going to be almost vengeful. And it is not healthy for anyone involved in those kind of relationships.
Yeah. And, at some point then you go, then why continue to be involved? I mean, like, if it's that negative, why continue? But so anger is either moving or stagnant. Anger is comfortable. And I know I've probably held on to anger longer than I should have. Anger can evolve into grieving and into healing. So,
Yeah, well, anger is part of the grieving process. I mean, there's someone who was in the office the other day, and you just tell that she's just numbed at this point. And that's where you usually are at the beginning. But anger is part of that grieving process, and it needs to be, handled. It has to be handled, however, in a constructive way. If we talked about, we got to keep our hand to ourselves. We need to see if we're going to have arguments, trying not to have them in front of the children. And again, I understand that because we're dealing with the limbic system versus the prefrontal lobe, that, it can get caught in the heat of the moment, that things don't always work out the way we had hoped they worked out. But still, we need to be able to figure out how can we manage the anger and deal with it in a constructive way. Because right, anger's healthy and it's good for you. You can't go through the grieving process if you don't have it.
So I'm going to go back to the John Taylor webinar because he talked about that and having those difficult conversations, or like when you're too angry and the 20 minutes and coming back in 20 minutes, like in doing the check-in and until you're in a place where you can have the conversation in a way that's going to be able to, where you're able to show up and represent yourself and not just rage, so.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there's lots of good content. If you go to, in fact, I put it in the chat for one person, but let me copy and paste this to everybody.
Yeah, people need to understand that there are many tools that you can use to help you navigate through this journey that you're on. It's always going to be, it's going to be a difficult journey. There's no doubt about that. There's no magic bullet to make this all go away. However, there are things that can be done that you don't, and Tammy mentioned before, you take a bad situation, you make it worse. And it can easily happen. I mean, what you're doing is you're just throwing gas onto the fire. And so therefore, they're to learn what those tools are, those techniques of how do we engage, when do we take breaks, being able to, for men to say, hey, look, I need to walk away, or the person who's been, who's the betrayer, I need to walk away, but I'm coming back. Just
Yes.
to say, I'm coming back. I just need to go regain my thoughts and thinking so I can answer what you need from me.
Yes.
There's many of those techniques that are out there that are available that really can help you walk through and navigate this whole process.
And before I got recovery, I was lacking all of them. And so I had to learn them. And I just wanted to let people know that, there are guides to all of this, and going to 12-step meetings, that's what a sponsor does. They help lead. I've been down here, you can follow me, I mean, all of those things. It's like, you don't have to, all of a sudden flip a switch and all of a sudden now you're going to be, able to do all this stuff. It isn't going to happen. And so
you don't know what you don't know. I mean, that's why I try to tell spouses, like, he doesn't get it. He's not, I need this, this, and this. I go, I know, I got it. And I am trying to ingrain those new thought processes in him so that his heart moves out that way. But you know what? You don't know what you don't know. And if I don't know it, I can't give it to you. So hopefully, but there is a way to learn. And as you said before, healing is possible.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a kindergartner doesn't know how to do geometry. You got to be taught. So you can get there, but so, okay, we're out of time. Thank you all so much for joining us. So Eddie is back again the third Wednesday of the month. So he'll be back the third week of November. I don't remember which one that is. So Kristen Snowden is the second, Eddie's the third, and then Troy Love will be next week. So join us. And I put the link so you can find the previously recorded so you can catch up on anything that you've missed. As always, grateful for your time and all the great information, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, folks.